Hello everyone, my name is Aarti and you're watching HW News. The winter session of the Parliament ended today. The last bill that was passed before the Parliament was adjourned for an indefinite period was the Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021. The bill has raised alarms as it seeks to link Aadhaar with the voter ID or electoral roll data, among other changes. The government has said that the bill is brought in for electoral reforms. One of the aims of this exercise is to register genuine voters and filter out fake voters and also address the issue of multiple voting. Now, the bill, which could impact not only privacy but also voting rights, was passed in Lok Sabha within half hour, 30 minutes. On Tuesday, it was introduced in Rajya Sabha and it was passed on the same day. The opposition alleged that the bill was bulldozed through the parliament and they weren't given enough time to discuss or deliberate on the topic, that the government did not hold any consultation with the public. Several privacy activists see a red flag in this move. They claim that this exercise will lead to large-scale disenfranchisement and targeted deletion of certain sections of the population from the list. In fact, such an exercise was conducted in 2015 by Election Commission, which was later stayed by Supreme Court judgment. To discuss about this in detail, we are joined by Srinivas Kodali. He is a researcher working on data, governance and internet. Hello sir, welcome to HW News. Let me just start by asking this question that has been on mind of everybody. Now, this primary fear of privacy activists is that Aadhaar and voter ID linking may lead to disenfranchisement of targeted deletion of people from electoral rolls. What exactly is the reason behind this fear? What is the basis of this fear?
The basis of this fear is the past linking exercise that has taken place in 2015. The Election Commission has already linked Aadhaar with voter IDs in 2015, part of this exercise called National Electoral Roll Purification Authentication Program, which was shut down by the Supreme Court in 2015 itself. But even in the time period of 6 months, from January 2015 till August 2015, there were at least 40 lakh voters who were deleted in Telangana in 2015. But by 2018 elections, some of them have been re-enrolled into the rolls again. Overall, 20 lakh voters could not vote during the assembly elections of 2018 in Telangana. A similar issue has happened in AP because both AP and Telangana had a common chief electoral officer in 2015. This bifurcation hasn't taken place by then. And in AP, we have seen far worse than voter deletions. We have seen all of this data, Aadhaar voter data, and all the other welfare data with the government of AP lead to the Telugu Desam party, which was then in the ruling coalition, right? So the Telugu Desam party had access to voter data of everybody in the state, and they were using that for voter profiling. And there were several complaints to the Election Commission of large-scale forms being filed to delete voters. Like, I can go file an application to delete you, that you don't exist in my locality. Okay, the thing about electoral rolls and electioneering is that different political parties can go file complaints saying that these individuals are duplicates, they don't exist, right? So large-scale forms were filed in Andhra Pradesh before the 2019 general elections. So whether it was targeted or not is something that needs investigation. There were actually FIRs by the Chief Electoral Officer of Andhra Pradesh. In case of the data leaks, there were complaints which were made to the Election Commission, the UIDAI. At every stage, every official was like, oh, the data did not leak from us, but there still was a data leak that was confirmed. There were enough reports of it. The question is, why wasn't there any large-scale investigation into it? The matter is still pending in the High Courts of Hyderabad, where the company which was involved with, where they had access to this data, there was no judgment on it yet. So there are enough grounds to be worried about this exercise again. Also, after the Supreme Court judgment on Aadhaar, which says it can only be used for subsidies. And voting is not a subsidy, it's our right.
I think, in fact, the Supreme Court had also said that it is not mandatory to link your bank account to Aadhaar, but still the banks also ask for your Aadhaar authentication.
I mean, yes, that's illegal. Okay, it's unconstitutional. It's contempt of court. It's up to the Supreme Court to act on it. And the courts have not been acting on serious issues, including like electoral bonds. Unless there is a pressure from the people, courts also do not act. In this case, with the Aadhar-Voter ID linking, I think it's up to the political parties to mobilize people, educate them, and explain why this is dangerous.
So if I understand correctly, then the issue with Aadhaar and voter ID linkage is that there could be a possible misuse of the data that is obtained through this exercise.
That is one of it. Okay, it's not the only issue. The larger concern is that this is laying grounds for e-voting in future. The experiments for that are already beginning in Telangana. There was a mock election in Khammam where they used smartphone-based e-voting, where your Aadhaar voter ID was linked and facial recognition was used to conduct a smartphone-based voting exercise. Now, anyone who looks into the issue of digital ID, which Aadhaar is, and the model where it has taken from, it has been taken from Estonia. It's a tiny European nation, which already has a smart card-based, digital ID-based online voting system. And we are copy-pasting a lot of these models from Estonia. It is bound to happen. And for the BJP, it's all about one nation, one election, where all of the elections are going to happen together. This is something that the Prime Minister has been talking a lot about. And that is also dangerous because it is going to centralize elections. It's going to create a disadvantages for the lot of regional parties, smaller parties. And if you look back at the Aadhaar voter ID linkage itself, the idea of electoral roll making is a very decentralized exercise in a constituency, where the electoral registration officer is the king. Not even the chief election commissioner can force his views onto the ERO. Now, with Aadhaar voter ID linking and through the software systems that you're going to do, all of this is being centralized, and the power to remove someone or add someone rests with the Election Commission of India, and the ERO loses its power. So no more it's a constituency activity. It's a very centralized activity between two different databases at a national scale, which is the Aadhaar database and the voter database. It centralizes power. It fundamentally changes how our elections are going to be held. It poses a threat to our demographic way of life, where you have any regional parties contesting elections, favoring national parties through a single election that is potentially going to happen soon.
But the government says, and one of the objective of the bill is that it will help to find out the bogus voters, and it will also stop the activity of multiple voting. Would this exercise actually help that objective?
I doubt so, because in the past when they did this, it only created disenfranchisement. It is bound to create further disenfranchisement for people who do not have Aadhaar. There are people who continue to face issues getting enrolled into Aadhaar, their biometrics not being detected. Until you fix Aadhaar, you can't claim that this is going to help with voter rolls. You're going to have issues imported from the Aadhaar database, all the issues with Aadhaar, to the electoral rolls. So you can't make that claim that this is going to fix it. There is no evidence that Aadhaar has actually helped find duplicates. In all the linking process that you have already done with banks, with telecoms, you continue to face those issues, right? So these are claims that the government is making. Now, there is no proof for it. And people have been demanding proofs in terms of the savings that they claim as well. And the government has never been able to supply us with any concrete proof. Now, these claims, while being great, while being noble, are just mere claims. The actual intentions, as I have been claiming, is a lot to do with the one nation, one election. It's a lot to do with online voting. That's bound to happen. And we already have experiments of these taking place in Telangana.
Now, according to this new bill, electoral registration officers can seek Aadhaar numbers of people who want to register as voter for the purpose of establishing their identity. But the government says that the move is entirely voluntary. So, in case a person doesn't want to furnish his Aadhaar number, he or she can show any other proof of identity. But do you think that will actually happen?
And we know how that works with banks. You just made a claim that Supreme Court has ordered banks not to ask Aadhaar, and they're still asking. Okay. Voluntariness with Aadhaar is just to ensure that the program is forced through the parliament so that there is no opposition in courts, because the court has said that Aadhaar can be mandatory. Okay. This is to essentially tell the court, oh no, we are not forcing it. Okay. Officially, they are not forcing it. But what happens on the ground will be entirely different.
So it will be like an exercise where you claim that it is voluntary, but the alternate will be made so difficult to access that people have to go back to Aadhaar.
You'll be forced to give Aadhaar. I mean, we have seen enough of this. It's been 5 years now, 2017, 4 years. 2017, say, they've started this. You're going to receive those deadlines, 3 months, 60 days, March 31st, September 31st. They'll keep on getting extended. They'll force you to do it. Until people resist this, that you will be forced. This will be forced on you.
What do you think after this happens? What will be the role of Election Commission? How do you see Election Commission's role in this?
Their role essentially is to prepare the electoral rolls. But that will be minimized because there's one more bill that's coming. It's amendments to the Registration of Birth and Deaths Act by the MHA, where they want to share birth certificates data with Aadhaar. And then from Aadhaar, they want to, whenever someone turns 18, because you have birth certificates, they're going to use that to update voter IDs. Now, this form of linking various different databases to track everything real time. There's a new paradigm called real-time governance, where the government intends to track you from birth to death and provide you all the benefits because they're tracking you all the time with Aadhaar. And they're going to give you a voter ID the moment you're born. When you turn 18, because they have your birth certificate and Aadhaar data. So the role of Election Commission in terms of creating electoral rolls will be minimized. But what will essentially happen is they will be hosting online elections, and Election Commission is just a shell, right? When you look at who are the EROs, who are the officials, they're all officials in government who have an additional role. It's the district collector who becomes district election officer during elections, right? During summary revisions. These are all additional posts that various bureaucrats and officials have. So the role of Election Commission will be essentially to use software to conduct elections. That's what it's going to be.
What you just explained, that leads to two questions. First is, you said that there will be a program wherein people will be tracked right from the moment they are born till their death. The government claims it is for transferring different benefits to them, but do you think it will also lead to surveillance? And the second question is about Aadhaar. Aadhaar was supposed to be a proof of residence and it was not supposed to be a proof of identity. But has it moved on from that objective of this exercise?
Aadhaar was only going to be a proof of identity. It was not going to be proof of age. It was not going to be proof of residence. It was not going to be proof of citizenship, only identity. It would only confirm that I am Srinivas Kodali. That's it. Right? Anything else could be wrong. Now, in terms of address, the government's bringing something called the digital smart address. It's the India Post which is bringing it, where they want to map every household and give it a unique address, because your voter ID is bound to constituencies and where you live, right? So the digital address that the government's creating, they want to link it with Aadhaar. Whenever you shift to a new address, you can use Aadhaar to update that this is your new address. And that's going to be used to generate your voter ID as well. What the government's creating is a host of different databases and application systems which are interlinked, as I've said, birth to death. okay, which will include interlinking of voter IDs, Aadhaar, motor vehicles like driver's licenses, uh, death certificates, you name it, your addresses, all of it. Now, this form of governance, as I said, they call it real-time governance. And yes, it is surveillance. If you look at the origins of Aadhaar when it came in 2009, the concerns that the civil society had was with Bombay attacks and the interest for the Ministry of Home Affairs to build something called the NAT grid, which was to essentially link a host of different databases. That's been happening now. And the proposal for the amendments to Birth and Death Registration Act, the National Population Register, the National Register of Citizens, all of them are coming from the Ministry of Home Affairs. Okay, so it's a large-scale transformation exercise that is being pushed via Aadhaar. Aadhaar is essentially a digital hook, which will be, or a chip, which will be placed on everybody, and all of you will be tracked using Aadhaar, and that's what the government wants to do.
Okay, but when privacy...
Easily all of this data can be shared to an IT cell. Okay, and that's what has happened in Andhra Pradesh. All of this data is leaked to TDP. It's being done in Andhra Pradesh, and it's just coming across the rest of the country.
Well, like you explained to me right now, what happens is when privacy activists actually talk about these issues, common people don't really understand the gravity of it, or they think it is a far-fetched idea, or it's a very dystopian idea that is being served to us. So people's common argument is, if you can voluntarily give your data to Google, who is also accessing your data, what is the problem of giving your data to your government?
The problem is I don't trust the political party in the government. Okay, we have seen large-scale protests on NRC. The reason we did not trust, some of the people did not trust the government, is because the way NRC was carried out in Assam. Governments have the power of violence. They have police with them. They can use that to arrest you. Okay, Google using surveillance, Facebook using surveillance is essentially to only show you an ad at max. They're not sending killer drones on you. That may happen in future, but that's a very unlikely scenario. But the government having a lot of this data is dangerous, especially when they are going to use that for electioneering, which is what has happened in Andhra Pradesh. I'm not accusing the BJP of doing this yet. I'm saying this is bound to happen.
So if it is to be stopped, if this misuse of this exercise is to be stopped, what do you suggest, or what should be the next course of action for political parties, for the civil society at large?
See, it's really hard to stop something when it's proliferated, right? Nuclear proliferation. We have actively controlled nuclear technologies not to proliferate. Because if the hands of the technology are everywhere with terrorists, with rogue nations, it could harm the world. Now, with data, if you're sharing it everywhere, linking it everywhere, everybody has access to it, it'll be really, really, really hard to control it, even if you have a strong data protection law. And we are not getting a strong protection law. The government has a lot of exemptions. The exemptions are primarily to build this giant apparatus. Okay. And how it is going to affect people over a period of time, I can't imagine. All I can tell you is that we have seen some drastic instances of this in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. And there is part of real-time governance. They also do real-time policing, where the police will have access to all of this data. And that's what happens in Hyderabad, where Hyderabad police has access to everybody's personal details. I don't know if you've seen it in recent news, where the Hyderabad police would stop you, take photos of you, stop you, take your fingerprints. Okay, it's a very dangerous situation that we are walking into. And yes, you can say that we are showing you a very gory picture, but that's reality where I live in. It's no more future, right? 10 years ago, when we are talking about this, it was future, but it's happening now.
So I think it is the people who need to be made more aware about this situation. And I hope the government also, now that the bill has been passed in Rajya Sabha as well, so there is no room for consultation. But if at all it happens, the government can actually go to people call in civil society experts and talk to them and consult them at least. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. Yes.
I doubt they will do that, but I'm warning people to be really wary of the next stage of this, which is going to be online voting.
Well, okay. On that note, thank you so much for joining us on this conversation. I hope people who are watching this video will get more clearer picture of what exactly is going to happen with Aadhaar and voter ID linkage. Thank you so much.